The spaces within some games are fixed, but in other games, the spaces can dynamically change. For example, there may be a destruction system where walls can be destroyed. We need to be able to adapt the acoustic sound of a space to reflect the visual representation of that space. So reverb is not always fixed, sometimes it's dynamic. Bookmark 6 takes us to cave 1, and between cave 1 and 2, there's a small passageway that's currently blocked by this large rock. So in the passageway, we've got a reverb volume. It's got quite a small, tight sound to it. And that's appropriate for that space as it stands, but we can cast a magic spell to remove the rock. Now this space has become part of cave 2, and so if we walk again, what we'd expect to hear is a different reverberation. So looking at our audio volume here, initially we've got this plate reverb. What we'd like to do is to swap that for another reverb when the wall is destroyed. So in our audio folder, reverbs, we've got another reverb here called Tunnel Opened. I'm just going to put that in there, and we can actually audition this live to change the settings to get something that's going to feel more appropriate. So we play the game. I'll isolate the footsteps with audio solo sound class character. So using Shift F1, I get control of the mouse. I'm just going to change a few of these settings so that it sounds more appropriate as if that wall is not there. Okay, back into the game. So we want that reverb when the wall is being destroyed. So this is the blueprint that controls that magic spell. This is the graphics, and the bit we're interested in is here. So when we're overlapping a collision box, we press E and it casts the spell and it plays the magic spell sound. So at this point, we want to switch those reverbs. So the first thing we need to do is to get a reference to that audio volume that's in our level. So we'll create a new variable and we'll call it audio volume, and it's going to be variable of type audio volume. Now if we make that public and compile, now we can see in the details panel we've got that public variable of the audio volume. We can use the picker to select the audio volume called tunnel, which is the one we're interested in. Then back in the blueprints, we'll get a copy of that. If we drag out from that, we can set reverb settings here, and what we need to do is to make reverb settings, and then we need a variable that's going to contain our reverb. So we'll create a new variable. We'll call that tunnel opened, and we'll have that variable type that is a reverb effect. We'll compile the blueprint so we can choose the reverb effect. If you remember, it was this one called tunnel open that we want to swap to. So tunnel opened, and we can bring that in and assign that reverb effect to this audio volume when the magic spell happens. So back in the level, remember we were playing around with this audio volume to get the sound of that tunnel open reverb right, so it's still set to that. So let's put it back to what it was originally, which is a small plate reverb, and play the game. I'm going to use the console command stat sound reverb so we can actually see what's on. So you can see here the plate is in effect for this small space. Cast our magic spell, and you can see that the active reverb effect changed, and now it feels like this space is part of that bigger space acoustically as well as visually. So this approach is relatively straightforward. The only problem with it is that it's a very immediate change. There's a sudden switch between the two reverb types, and that might not always be appropriate. So let's look at another method for achieving the same effect. Back in the level, what we could do is actually stack multiple audio volumes on top of each other. So I'll select that tunnel audio volume. I'm going to hold down Alt to create a copy of it here. So it encompasses pretty much the same space. And what I'll do with my original one called tunnel is that is enabled and that is plate. And my second one here, I'll set it so that when the game starts, that is not enabled and that this has the new reverb we want, tunnel opened. So in our blueprints, we now need to get a reference to this second audio volume, tunnel 2. So we'll do the same thing. That's our audio volume variable type. So let's just duplicate that. We'll call that audio volume 2. And that's already public because we duplicated it. So compile that. So audio volume 2 in our blueprint here, we'll use the picker and we'll select our new audio volume. So in the blueprint, we can get rid of this and that. So that's our original audio volume, and that's the audio volume that we want to take effect. So from here, what we want to do is to set enable to false, switching off the plate reverb, and here set enabled to true. So switching one audio volume off and the other one on. So we should be hearing our plate reverb. And when I press E to cast the magic spell, the second audio volume should switch on. Now, the advantage of doing this, we go back and look at our audio volumes, is that we can actually use the fade time of the audio volumes to kind of crossfade between those two different reverb effects to interpolate between their settings. So let's just put an extreme example here, this tunnel open. We'll say the fade time here is going to be 10, so we can really hear it taking effect. So we're in the small passageway, we're hearing the plate reverb. And when I press E to activate the magic spell, it's going to switch the reverb, but it's going to apply those settings over 10 seconds. So what we should hear is that reverb gradually being added to the footsteps. So here's the footsteps without it. Pressing E to activate my magic spell. And you could hear that reverb gradually being applied. We've learnt a couple of methods for dynamically changing reverbs in order to reflect changes in a room's shape or dimensions.